morning. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Brave, Bold Women. I'm Cathy Alessandra, your host, and I'm very excited today to bring you another episode of Brave, Bold Women. Now, today I have a very special guest, and I'll share with you a little bit about how we met. But Michelle Rose Gilman founded Fusion Academy and Learning Centers. It's a private alternative to one-on-one school. Her students did not fit the one-size-fits-all category, and so she created a new model of education. And it literally started 30 years ago in her garage in San Diego. I love that. Well, let me tell you, it has grown. It has grown to over 60 campuses across the country. Fusion is now a leader in the education industry with over $300 million in annual revenues. Now, Michelle has written 8 books and has been awarded numerous honors for her achievements. Most recently, she was recognized by the 2019 San Diego Women Who Mean Business Awards. She's also placed on Inc. magazine's 500 fastest growing companies 4 years in a row. She's a regular blogger for Huffington Post, and that's actually how I met you to begin with, was a blog that you posted on Huffington Post that spoke to my soul. And I mean, that had to have been at least 3 years ago, and reached out because of that blog, and we connected. She's a lifelong artist and owns Featherpunk Studio. She currently coaches women and men in business through her private practice, The Well-Heeled Warrior. Along with her husband, Peter, Michelle's most recent book, The Wanderlust Warrior Project, an empowerment project for women, was released in September of 2019. Super exciting. So, Michelle, welcome to the call. I am so excited to have you here. Just absolutely thrilled.
Oh, Cathy, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to reconnect. It's been, a couple of years since we actually talked.
Right,
Lovely
exactly.
lunch. Yeah. And I remember it like it was yesterday, so thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's just dive right in for our listeners, because you are a brave, bold woman, and you have done some amazing things in your career, personally, professionally. Just everything that you had done spoke to me when we originally met. So if you could just share with our listeners to start with, how and why did you start your business?
Well, it depends on which one.
Okay.
Excuse me, but let's start with Fusion Academy, because
Mm-hmm.
I would have to say over the course of 30 years, that's been my life's work. And like you had stated, Fusion is a one-to-one private school for kids that traditionally don't fit into the traditional model of education. And that started, like you said, 30 years ago in my garage. And the reason I started Fusion was basically out of a critical need.
Mm-hmm.
There was a problem, and the problem was that there were kids that were left underserved or unserved completely back then. Still are now, but there's a lot more choices now. Back then, you didn't have a lot of choice.
Right.
And I used to say we took all the kids that nobody else wanted. The bad apples, right? The bad kids, the kids that had bad reputations or learning issues or, attention issues or social issues or emotional issues. And there was no place for them to go. That's kind of my background. Working in psychiatric adolescent facilities. I used a lot of the knowledge that I gained from that to create Fusion. And I knew what these kids needed. And they did not, what I would call, have a docking station back then. And so Fusion became their docking station. And extremely personalized education, one-on-one. Everything is customized to their strengths. And the culture is like none other. So it started out of a critical need, as I believe most businesses that are successful do, right?
Right, absolutely.
The founder sees there's a need for something, it doesn't exist. Let's go make that thing and not be scared to do it.
Right. Stepping through that fear, for
Totally.
sure. What has been your, as you were, do you want to share at all about any of the other things that you've taken on, Featherpunk, or was that something that spoke to your soul?
Yeah, I would actually. So I do a lot of other things. And one of the things that I do is I now also work with men and women in business. I am a business coach.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I felt compelled and a longing to do this type of work is because back when I started, really, and you probably remember this, Cathy, there weren't coaches, there weren't mentors 30 years ago.
Right.
You kind of jumped in, especially as a woman, and you kind of figured it out as you went along, right?
Yep.
And having 30 years behind me and learning so darn much, I felt like I could help women and men on their path to success.
Right.
And avoid some of the hurdles and the obstacles that go along with opening a business. And you know, the difference between me and like a 30,000 foot coach is I get in the trenches with my clients. We actually do the work together. Some of my clients call it like, you know, rent a business partner. And I love it. I feel like I'm involved in about 30 other businesses, all different industries. And it brings me incredible satisfaction. Also, my entire life, I've been an artist. And I just can't stop creating. I love it. I do very strange fantasy art with my business, Featherpunk Studio. I also design jewelry. And I just, every weekend you can find me here at home just creating something magical and new.
Oh, how fun. I think that's part of the gift of an entrepreneur, I think, in a way too, right? There's that massive creative side, whether it's creating a new business out of a need like Fusion Academy, right? Or creating art and jewelry. I know there's something for me that speaks to that creative side in life. So I think,
you know, I think all entrepreneurs that create things are artists. And they don't often give themselves that credit of calling themselves an artist. But when you create something that never existed before, that's art.
Right.
In whatever form. If you write a book or, you know, whatever that is, that thing is that you made that's uniquely yours. Right. That's a beautiful piece of art for the world.
Absolutely. So. I love that. I totally agree with you there. So tell me something, you know, as you went through, I mean, particularly 30 years ago, as you mentioned, there weren't mentors, there weren't coaches. You saw a need and you filled it. There had to have been some massive struggle that went along with that, I'm guessing. I mean, I know just as we move through and coming up with ideas and bouncing things. So what were your biggest struggles or your biggest challenges? And how did you overcome them? How did you work through them?
Yeah, great question. You know, as entrepreneurs, we always have challenges. And like I said, especially 30 years ago, there wasn't as much support as there is now. You know, we didn't have Facebook. We didn't have women's groups that we could go and chat with other women. There was none of that.
Right.
We didn't really have networking stuff back then, to believe it or not. Excuse me. There were quite a few challenges. I remember early on in my career, I was told by a male administrator in a private high school that I should not work with high school students because I looked too young and I was too pretty and I would be distracting. And I remember thinking to myself, "Whoa, okay, yeah, all right, well, let's get into this." And you know, it did make me doubt myself at first, and ask myself, "Oh gosh, is that a problem? Do I look too young?" You know, because I would often walk the halls of the high school, and sometimes I would be thought of as a student. I had a youthfulness about me in my 20s. Right. But what I ended up doing, Cathy, is I took that knowledge and I used it. And I'm like, okay, if that's the case, if I look young, and I don't know if I am attractive or whatever it is, I'm going to use that to my advantage. Right? That youthfulness. Right. I'm going to use it to connect with my students. I'm going to use it to build a relationship with them. Right. And I turned that, what it could have been a negative experience and kind of stopped me in my tracks, to really the foundation of Fusion, which is relationship-based education. So I used the fact that I looked young, and they seemed to relate. My students related to me, and I took it and I turned it around. Right. The other thing that I remember early on, when I was done and totally disenfranchised from the entire traditional public school system. And I started working on fusion. I'm actually an educational therapist. I moved out to California. And at the time I was collecting testing materials to test my kids to see if they had learning issues and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember calling some of the educational therapists in and around San Diego and to introduce myself. I had limited funds at the moment, back then, and I didn't want to spend my money frivolously. So I asked them, you guys have been doing this for a while. What are the best tests that you guys use out there? Because I don't want to waste my money, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you find most helpful?
Right.
And Cathy, I kid you not a single woman educational therapist would give me an answer. They didn't want to talk to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the idea of collaboration was just, no.
That's exactly right. I was floored that they didn't want to mentor. They didn't want to help. They saw it as a threat. I don't even know what it was. Whatever it was, they did not want me entering their space. So
Right.
absolutely zero assistance.
Wow.
So I said, screw it, I'm going to figure this out myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of been my motto,
Mm-hmm.
My whole career. Screw it, I'm going to figure it out. I don't need you to tell me. I'm no longer going to ask unless I really, really need to.
Right.
And I think that has served me. I would say I'm very self-sufficient. I'm a fast learner. And those early times where people just didn't want to help me, I swear I refuse to be like that. I'm the opposite now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a mentor, I'm a coach. Come and ask me whatever you need,
Right.
and I will be there.
Wow. Unfortunately, that speaks to some people's experiences even now. I mean, there is somewhat that fear of competition, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the whole purpose behind Brave, Bold Women and me starting this, is to bring women together in collaboration. I want women to be supportive of other women, empowering other women. You're a business coach, I'm a business coach. We're going to attract two very different people, right? And the idea that we're able to come together and collaborate on this even, right? I think there's a lot to be said for supporting others in their career and then what that actually does for us. And I love the fact that it basically motivated and drove you into, becoming self-driven and look what was created, right?
Well, that's right. And, there's nothing more unstoppable than a group of women coming together to help themselves.
Absolutely.
And each other, right?
Yep.
And just coming together. I mean, you and I both know the energy of bringing women together in groups.
Absolutely.
And I used to hold a meeting, I hope I can say this on your show, called the Oh Shit meeting. And the Oh Shit meeting was for strictly women entrepreneurs who kind of worked alone, to be able to come together on a monthly basis and, bring their stuff.
Yeah.
And help each other. What questions do you have? How can I help you? What's your shit right now?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a 2-hour meeting once a month. And man, I absolutely adored it. Young women now, I think, understand that women's groups and coming together and supporting each other is the thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Older women, like me, we come from a time where that didn't exist, right? And so I think our age group, you and me, bringing this to younger women is so important, and bringing it to women our age as well, and getting them on board and coming together for sure.
Right. Absolutely. Mentorship and support, empowering women, supporting women empowering women, and bringing it together, where the world will be a greater place if we can all just, work together. So let me ask you this, with all the years and the success that you've had, how would you define success for you?
I love this question, right? There's so many ways to answer it for me. Being in the helping industry, I think first and foremost, I would define my success is improving the lives of everybody I come in contact with, right? Through my coaching, through my leadership, through fusion, through my art, right? my feeling is the more people that come to love and appreciate themselves because of anything I have done for them or with them,
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's success.
Right.
Right. To me, I don't measure success monetarily, although the money's nice, and it's important. But my goal, I think, in life is to help and enrich the lives of others. Another important component of success for me is waking up excited about the work that I do.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I've always said to, my employees at Fusion and in my coaching practice, 50% of what I do is to create the best service possible
Mm-hmm.
for people. And the other 50% is to have the time of my life.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that, if you can do that, then that's success.
Right.
You have to enjoy the ride, Cathy.
Right. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Why is it so many people feel like it has to be a really uncomfortable ride? I mean, yes, there's challenges and yes, there's fear. I mean, I don't know about you. I know that I have, there's definitely things that you face and it's like no shit moment, like you said, right?
Right.
Oh man, get me off this ride. But I wake up every morning loving what I do. And if I wake up and I start to not love what I do, then I'm not in the right, something's got to tweak, something's got to shift for
That's
me.
right. And for me too. And what's really interesting is, there are going to be bad days. It's not like every day I jump out of bed. I get a case of the Mondays too, like everybody else. It's like, really?
Oh, you mean you're human?
Yeah, human. I think the thing that a lot of women and men don't understand and really grasp is this idea of we only have one at bat in this life.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to die.
Right.
It's not a morbid thought. It should be talked about because it's true.
Right.
And a lot of people, that they can't even fathom that idea. And as a result, they kind of walk along one little sliver of life, right? A little area of life, their whole life.
Right.
And they don't realize, I'm going to die once. I want to experience things. I want to be happy. I don't need this negative person or this negative environment. I can actually change my world. And I'm on a mission to help women figure that out.
Yeah, I love that, Michelle, because I think it's so important. I think women in particular, they get into that people pleasing and they don't think they necessarily have the right to be happy or to love what they do. I've always said, I don't want to be one of those woulda, coulda, shoulda women.
Yeah.
At the end of my life, right? I mean, my traveling, my journeys, my, the things, the bucket list, it doesn't need to happen after you're, 75 years old or 80 or whatever, right? I don't, and whether that's traveling for somebody or starting a business or picking up an art, some sort of art thing that they haven't ever done, right? Why are women in particular holding back on, really finding some of that time for themselves and doing something they really love?
So true.
Yeah.
So true. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So when you're looking at your business now, 30 years into it, what do you wish that you might have known when you started that you know now?
Great question. And I'm going to give you an unorthodox answer.
Okay.
Nothing. And here's why. I was forced to self-learn, right?
Yeah.
I stumbled and I struggled and I figured it out. And then I stumbled and I struggled and I figured it out again. And I kept doing that cycle so much that I learned what worked for me. And again, you have to understand, back then, as you know, there weren't mentors, there weren't coaches. Coaching was not a thing back then, right?
Yep.
And having doors slammed by other women who didn't want to help me, I just resolved that I'm going to figure all this out. I'm going to do it my way. And maybe people aren't going to understand, and maybe this isn't the way the world does it, but by God, I'm going to figure it out. And I think my life might have been very different if I knew for certain things. So the fact that I figured it out on my own, I give myself a lot of credit for.
Yeah.
I can't think of a thing that I wish I would have known before.
Right. Okay. I mean, the fact is I think we learn and we take, well, if we're on top of it, we're taking what we learn along the journey to be able to create. Like we couldn't be here if we hadn't gone through the lessons, right?
That's right. That's kind of my point. It's like,
Yeah.
thank God for the lessons.
Right.
Because I think I'm stronger and better because of them. So yeah, that's the fusion journey, right?
Right.
There is one thing with my art and my jewelry design that I wish I would have known. I'll give you an answer for that one.
Okay.
There's a huge difference between being in the service industry that I've been my whole entire life,
right,
and knowing how to market to that group and, inspire people and do all that. Totally different world when we're talking trying to sell art in a jewelry line in a retail market. So one of the things I wish I would have known better how to do when I went the retail and art area was understand better the marketing, because it's vastly different than the service industry.
Right. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Is your art are you selling it online on your own website? Are you actually in stores or?
Yes, I am. You can go to featherpunkstudio.com and it's all there. I'm also at a couple of galleries, local ones down here in San Diego, Art and Soul on the 101. You can find my art at Saatchi Art online. It's an online gallery. They wrote cool stuff. And I'm also in a gallery in Palm Desert called Art 925.
Awesome. Oh, that's exciting. How fun.
Exciting.
Whole different chapter, whole different thing. So let me ask you a final question here.
Okay.
So what is next for you as a brave, bold woman looking into the future, looking at Fusion Academy, looking at your art? What's next? What's next for you and what
Thank you
makes
so much. So much. Now, a couple of really important things. We recently, my husband and I collaborated on a book called The Wonderless Warrior Project. And it's available out. It came out in September of last year. And it's a inspirational empowerment workbook interview book for women. We wrote it for a younger population, but what we're finding is it's resonating with women of all ages. So we're super excited about that. So we're going to be coming up, writing this year, kind of a handbook for it, because it's perfect for groups. We're also going to be putting on some online courses that are attached to the workbook, so that if you want to dive deeper, you can go online and you can take a look at all the courses, and it'll walk you through if you're a teacher or you're a group facilitator, or you're just a woman wanting to go further into each chapter. The other thing is that we're in collaboration, Well-Heeled Warrior, in collaboration with Graceful Leadership, Grace Losada. We're putting out a series of workshops, one-day workshops this year, called, and I hope I can say this on your channel, What the Fuck is Stopping You? I apologize if I've offended anybody. But a reason I'm so excited about these workshops is through my practice of working with women and men for the last 7 years or so, I found that almost everybody suffers from fear and judgment of what others are going to think of them, and it often stops them from reaching their goals. And sometimes they're not even aware of what stops them. Sometimes they self-sabotage, but really it's coming from a place of fear and anxiety and judgment. So we're putting on this one-day workshop. It's either going to be May 2nd or May 16th of this year. I'll let you know when it is. And it's down in San Diego. We're super, super excited to bring that to the women in Southern California.
Well, you can bring women from all over the country with that kind
That's
of
the goal.
content, because you're absolutely right. That is I think fear is a huge thing for women in wanting to pursue their business or their career or a plethora of things, right? So I love that. What the fuck is stopping you? And looking at that, really diving into what it is that is stopping you from living your best life, your
That's right.
greatest life.
That's right.
Everybody's here for a reason and a purpose.
That's exactly right. And I think it tags right into this, my whole big idea about we only live once and we're going to die. So what the fuck is stopping you from doing the thing you want to do?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And taking it a step further, who the hell are you to hold it back from the rest of the world?
Oh, I love that.
Right. I mean, you have a gift that was meant to be given. So, yeah.
The world needs it. Let's do it. Let's bring it forth.
Right, exactly. Awesome. Well, okay. So before we go, if somebody wants to connect with you for coaching or to find out more about the event you've got coming up or your books, where can they go to get more information and connect with you?
Sure. A couple of places. If you go to the wellhealedwarrior.com, and that's healed with 2 E's, not an E and an A, wellhealedwarrior.com.
Think of your high heels.
Right, your heels. You can find more information about me and my coaching practice along with my husband, who does copywriting and business strategy. We work together. If you're interested in my art, you can go to featherpunkstudio.com. If you're interested in our latest book, you can go to the wanderlustwarriorproject.com. Awesome. And you can always follow me on Insta at wellhealedwarrior featherpunk studio. The other thing I'd love to offer your listeners, Cathy, today is if they are interested in a 30-minute strategy call and they mention that they heard me on your program, I'm happy to provide that for them.
Oh, awesome. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that gift. I appreciate it. Yeah. I hope some women will step up and take advantage of that. It would be amazing, no doubt. I actually I'm excited about your May event. I'm hoping that works for me to be able to come down to San Diego and
I'd love to see you.
Yeah, it would be awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with the listeners. We have a lot of brave, bold women listening, as well as women who really are wanting to step into that brave, bold, being that brave, bold woman. And, hearing stories and understanding it's not overnight success, that it really takes us stepping out and stepping up in our greater self and being able to listen to you and what you've created and what you're doing and how you're continuing to create and move forward is very inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Cathy. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today at another episode of Brave, Bold Women. We'll be back again next time with another episode. Until then, stay brave, stay bold, and be sure to connect with us online and on social media. Have a great day. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.